Mr. Speaker, here we go again, considering yet another short-term continuing resolution. The last CR was for 2 weeks. This is a 3-week bill. So I guess the good news is that we're heading in the right direction. But that's about the only good news, Mr. Speaker. This is no way to run a budget process. It is no way to run a government. It's like water torture, drip, drip, drip. How are governors and mayors and city councils supposed to plan if we keep passing these short-term bills? How are the financial markets supposed to have any certainty if we're passing bills that go only for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? We all know what needs to happen. Democrats and Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the White House need to get together and figure out a sensible bipartisan solution to this year's budget. And while it may, be convenient to blame the Senate, I should remind my colleagues here that the majority leader in the Senate tried to bring up a bill, but the Republicans voted to not allow the bill to be considered. So it's not like there aren't alternatives out there. The time for rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, is past. The time for press releases and posturing is over. The time for finger-pointing must end. Because despite what some on the other side of the aisle seem to believe, a government shutdown is not in our nation's best interest. I look at today's Politico, and one of the leading Republican spokesmen, Representative Steve King, is quoted extensively in an article saying that defunding is worth a shutdown. I think the last thing the American people want is for us to shut down the government. Because, Mr. Speaker, I suppose we should also be grateful that the bill before us today does not include some of the policy changes that were in H.R. 1, such as blocking money for health care reform and Planned Parenthood, which they voted to eliminate in H.R. 1. H.R. 1, Mr. Speaker, took a meat axe to border security, to food safety, low-income heating assistance, medical research, and I could go on and on and on. And thankfully, the Senate rejected that approach last week. But make no mistake, H.R. 1 is what my Republican colleagues not only want, but are demanding. Logical and rigid loyalty to H.R. 1 is what is holding up these negotiations. And the cuts in H.R. 1, Mr. Speaker, are not only egregious, but they are reckless and they are damaging. According to former John McCain economic advisor Mark Zandi, the bill had the potential to lead to 700,000 lost jobs, exactly the wrong prescription for our recovering economy. And speaking of jobs, Mr. Speaker, where are the Republican jobs bills? Where is the legislation to encourage investment in new technologies, in infrastructure, in education, and in medical research? It's been 11 weeks, and we have seen nothing, not a thing from the other side of the aisle on jobs. Let me remind my colleagues that if you truly want to achieve deficit reduction, focus on job creation, put people back to work. We can help grow out of this deficit that we have. Mr. Speaker, we can and we must do better. And I urge my colleagues to oppose this closed rule. I'll remind my colleagues that we have yet to have a truly